Daniel, I think we've been talking about the threat of inflation probably since we first met almost a year ago. Why is it only today, basically, or this week, that we start to see it in the media? All of a sudden, it's a panic.
Well, we have been talking about the risk of stagflation and increasing money supply dramatically, which would inevitably lead to two effects. No, the first one, the base effect, which when the economy recovers, commodities in particular rise very rapidly or come back very rapidly. And the second is the debasement of fiat currencies. We've seen how many currencies have weakened in 2020, and that obviously generates inflation. And we're seeing it in food prices, mostly in emerging economies, but also in developed economies. Even in the Eurozone, we have seen, for example, that food prices were rising almost twice as fast as the headline CPI. And the problem is that nobody was talking about it because I think it was this idea that you're never going to see inflation no matter how much money supply growth there is, was embedded in too many of the mainstream messages. And now it's coming back, and it's coming back aggressively, particularly at a moment in which, for example, the economic growth estimates of the Eurozone are coming down. So if inflation creeps up and growth estimates come down, then we are in significant challenging times.
How exactly will it impact the economic recovery?
Well, the problem with this type of inflation is that it comes at a moment in which consumption is already quite weak. So, what happens is that non-replicable goods and services, essential goods and services, so food, utilities, healthcare, insurance, education, go up significantly, and therefore the disposable income of citizens is coming down faster than what central banks or governments perceive. And then consumption, which is an integral part of the recovery, is not as robust as many expect. And we have seen it, for example, in the retail sales in the United States, despite a recovery. So I think that the reason why governments should be concerned is precisely because of that. Is because the the amount of increases in prices that we are seeing in the essential goods and services make it more difficult for the weaker part of the economy to recover because consumption is not going to come back as fast as it was expected.
Who exactly gets hurt the most in these particular economic circumstances?
The ones that are hurt the most are the lower to middle classes. Why? Because if you look at the goods that are rising faster, are the ones that the lower classes or the people with the least privileged people have as their biggest source of consumption. No. So there are numerous studies by Cavallo and other professors that show that the inflation for the worse off parts of the economy is higher, up to twice, than the official consumer price index. So obviously, the ones that are hurt the most by inflation are the poorest, and that's why I think it was Milton Friedman who said that inflation is the taxation of the poor. No. Hmm?
And so this is a difficult decision somebody like the Biden administration has, who are continually, looking to help the poor, printing money to give to people. But then on the flip side, they've got this challenge with inflation. What do they do from a policy perspective?
It is very difficult because what you would need to do to curb monetary created inflation, like the one that we have been mentioning, the base effect and the fiat currency debasement, is finds itself clashing with the desires to spend a lot more and increase the deficit. Mm? So governments find themselves almost in a very difficult situation in which they have to, on one side, try to help the weaker part of the economy, the citizens, the worse off citizens, with significant subsidies, but at the same time, the policies that they're undertaking are affecting these people the most. No, so in essence, to be fairly honest, what the Biden administration should do is to return to a sound monetary and fiscal policy, is to try to be less aggressive on the deficit and significantly less aggressive on the monetization of debt by the Federal Reserve. That would certainly help. And I think that that would certainly help. Why? Because unlike other developed economies, the United States economy is in a more robust recovery process. So the U.S. administration could actually afford to be less aggressive in terms of spending and continue to drive the recovery further, which depends fundamentally on the vaccine process, which is going very well, and and keeping the essential businesses open for as much as you can.
We'll see if it happens. They seem to be preparing a $2 trillion package as we speak. And from a wealth perspective, Daniel, do you make any changes to your portfolio on the headlines we've seen or not?
What we have been doing is we have been increasing our exposure to inflation-linked bonds and to gold and precious metals in general. I think that's one of the ways. The other, I think that we spoke about it at the end of last year, is that we became more exposed to the US dollar, particularly relative to the euro, because the situation of the US economy is much stronger than the European one, and the policy of the Federal Reserve, even being extremely accommodative, is not as aggressive as the one of the European Central Bank. So basically just adding a bit of defense to the portfolio.
Oh, it's really chaotic market at the moment, right? Daniel, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Have a good day.